What happens when a cartoon goes so far outside the rules that television can't handle it anymore? The 1970s and 1980s were wild years for animation. Studios pushed big ideas, sharp humor, and bold visuals, sometimes crossing lines broadcasters never expected. In the middle of it all, a handful of shows went too far for the times and quietly vanished from the air. What you are about to hear may surprise you more than you think. Number 10. Watership Down, 1978. Imagine tuning in for what you think is a gentle animal adventure, only to realize within minutes that this was no ordinary story. Watership Down arrived in 1978, looking like a calm, hand-drawn tale about rabbits. Instead, it became one of the most unexpected shocks in television history. When networks later aired it on TV, they faced a tidal wave of complaints from parents who thought it was meant for very young viewers. The film didn't hold back on emotion. It explored survival, community, danger, and courage in ways that felt startlingly intense for an animated broadcast. Viewers expecting soft woodland cheer found themselves watching scenes that carried a heavier tone than Saturday evening television was prepared for. Complaints poured in, articles were written, and some channels quickly pulled the film from their rotation to avoid further backlash. Yet here's the twist. Despite the controversy, Watership Down earned deep respect for its honesty and its willingness to treat animation as a medium capable of real storytelling weight. It forced broadcasters to rethink how they scheduled animated films and helped shape future discussions about what animation could be. The film's disappearance from some TV lineups didn't erase its legacy. It only made it stronger. Number 9. Renegades of Gatchaman, 1972. Before it became the softened version known as Battle of the Planets, the original Gatchaman landed in a handful of international test markets in its untouched form. What aired was fast, intense, and visually fierce, powered by rapid-fire action sequences and dramatic stakes that animation in the West simply wasn't used to. Viewers expecting colorful heroics got something far more serious. Broadcasters reacted almost instantly. The original episodes showed the consequences of high-energy confrontations, daring missions, and heart-pounding escapes with a realism uncommon for the era. For stations used to gentle morning programming, this was a shock. Some markets pulled the show before it even finished its initial test run. Others requested edits so heavy that entire story arcs no longer made sense. It became clear the original version was too bold for the expectations of Western broadcasters at the time. The American adaptation, Battle of the Planets, arrived soon after with added lighthearted scenes, a friendly robot guide, and major cuts. But even with edits, viewers could still feel the intensity peeking through. In a strange way, the controversy made the show even more legendary. Fans who saw glimpses of the original version realized there was a bigger, richer story underneath the broadcast-friendly coating. The early pull from TV didn't destroy Gatchaman's legacy. It amplified it. Today, it stands as one of the clearest examples of a series too ambitious for its era and too groundbreaking to be forgotten. Number 8. Rock and Rule, 1983. When Rock and Rule hit television for the first and only time, audiences didn't quite know what they were walking into. On the surface, it looked like a stylish animated musical from a small Canadian studio. But behind its neon lights and futuristic world, the film played with themes and visuals that television programmers found a little too daring for general broadcast hours. It featured a world filled with amplified personalities, dramatic musical performances, and a rebellious tone that pushed hard against early 80s TV standards. The animation was bold, the soundtrack was intense, and the story leaned heavily into the edgy rock culture mood of its era. After one late-night showing, some broadcasters decided they weren't willing to invite the swirl of complaints they knew would follow if it aired again, so it disappeared. But here's the fascinating part. Rock and Rule didn't fade into obscurity. Instead, it became a cult classic whispered about by animation fans who couldn't believe a film this visually creative had been pulled from TV. It showcased a level of artistic ambition that enormous studios weren't attempting yet. That originality turned it into an underground legend. In the end, the film wasn't removed because it failed. It vanished because it was too ahead of its time. And sometimes, that's the greatest badge of honor an animated movie can wear. Number 7. Alfred J. Kwak, 1989. Few people expect a children-esque cartoon to dive into topics most adult shows avoid, yet Alfred J. Kwak did exactly that. Released in 1989, it disguised itself as a lighthearted adventure about a little duck navigating life with his adoptive family. But beneath the cute style, the show tackled unusually heavy themes for young audiences, including leadership, inequality, and the rise of harmful beliefs. Some episodes introduced characters who represented extreme worldviews. Instead of treating these elements lightly, the show addressed them head-on with surprising depth. That boldness put broadcasters in a tough position. While critics praised the intelligence of the series, several TV networks felt the themes were too complicated for young kids and too risky for parents who preferred traditional, easygoing cartoons. A few countries aired the full show, but many quietly pulled specific episodes or avoided airing the series altogether. Complaints centered not on one dramatic scene, but on the overall seriousness of the topics and the show's refusal to sugarcoat its messages. For a cartoon with a smiling duck on the cover, it was unexpectedly fearless. Here's the twist. That courage became the very reason fans admire it today. Alfred J. Kwak didn't treat its audience like children, it treated them like thinkers. And while some broadcasters retreated, viewers never forgot the honesty it brought to the screen. Number 6. Starblazers, 1979. Before space fantasy took over cinema, Starblazers brought a sweeping cosmic adventure to television screens in a way no Western cartoon had ever attempted. Adapted from the Japanese series known as Space Battleship Yamato, it followed a brave crew traveling across the galaxy to save their home from a distant threat. The storytelling was serialized, emotional, and deeply atmospheric, drawing viewers into an ongoing narrative instead of simple one-episode stories. But beneath the incredible world-building, broadcasters saw something else. The ship at the center of the story was based on a real vessel from history, which carried heavy associations in some countries. The combination of space drama and historical symbolism made certain international networks uncomfortable. Episodes with more dramatic themes or tense moments were quietly pulled, and in a few places, the show was removed from the schedule entirely. Western networks also struggled with the show's emotional weight. Characters faced serious choices, heartfelt moments, and consequences rarely seen in animated shows for young audiences. Some parents felt the tone was too heavy compared to the usual lighthearted afternoon lineup. Yet here, that's what made Starblazers unforgettable. It treated animation as real storytelling, not filler content. It showed that cartoons could have arcs, character development, and long-term stakes. The controversy only added to its legend. For many fans, Starblazers wasn't just a show. It was the moment animation grew up. Number 5. Grave of the Fireflies, 1988. Some animated films whisper gently. Others arrive like a quiet storm that leaves entire audiences silent. Grave of the Fireflies, released in 1988, belongs to the second category. When it first aired on television, broadcasters believed they were offering viewers a thoughtful animated drama. What they didn't expect was the emotional impact. This wasn't just a film. It was a powerful reflection on resilience, childhood, and survival during a difficult time in history. The film follows two siblings navigating a world reshaped by conflict. It handles these themes with such honesty that many adults found themselves unprepared for the emotional weight it carried. After its initial broadcast, parents and broadcasters both stepped forward with concerns. They felt the tone was too intense for general television audiences. Some even argued it deserved a carefully selected time slot, far away from the usual cartoon hours. As a result, several networks quietly removed the film from rotation, not because it was inappropriate, but because it was simply too powerful. The emotional depth, the stillness, the hard truths beneath its gentle animation style proved overwhelming for casual viewers who tuned in expecting something lighter. And yet, That's exactly why Grave of the Fireflies is now considered a masterpiece. It stretched the limits of what animation could express. It showed that animated stories could be deeply human, intensely moving, and artistically serious. Its temporary disappearance from TV didn't hide it. It solidified its legacy. Number 4. The New Adventures of Mighty Mouse, 1987. Most children-esque cartoons play it safe. The New Adventures of Mighty Mouse, revived in 1987, did not. Known for its reckless humor, rapid pacing, and unpredictable scenes, the show had an energy that felt like it was constantly balancing on the edge of chaos. The creators leaned hard into satire, poking fun at television itself and bending every rule they could find. Kids loved it. Adults weren't so sure. Then came the moment that changed everything. A single scene sparked a wave of complaints. Viewers misinterpreted a dramatic sequence and believed it suggested behavior unsuitable for young audiences. Even though the creators explained it was harmless and unintentional, the fear of controversy spread fast. Networks, already cautious about anything that might spark debate, reacted with speed. Episodes were reviewed. Conversations grew tense. And soon, several stations pulled the show entirely to avoid further misunderstanding. It was one of the fastest and most dramatic removals of a cartoon during the decade. But here's where things get interesting. The controversy overshadowed the fact that The New Adventures of Mighty Mouse was one of the most innovative cartoons of its time. It pushed visual comedy to new limits, revived an old character with fresh personality, and influenced a generation of animators who admired its courage. The show vanished quickly, but its impact stayed for years. Number 3. Dungeons and Dragons, 1983. When Dungeons and Dragons launched in 1983, it instantly stood out from other animated shows. It wasn't a simple adventure series. It was a fully realized fantasy quest, loaded with magic, teamwork, danger, and heartfelt moments. Each episode followed a group of friends transported into a mystical world, facing challenges that tested their courage and loyalty. For young viewers who loved imagination, this show was a dream. But during the early 80s, anything involving fantasy themes quickly attracted attention. Parent groups worried that the show's mysterious monsters, dramatic battles, and intense moments were too strong for some children. A few episodes even included emotional dilemmas that felt surprisingly heavy compared to typical Saturday programming. Complaints began to circulate, arguing that the themes felt too dark for daytime TV. Networks listened. While the show was beloved, stations grew cautious. In some regions, specific episodes disappeared from schedules. In others, the entire series was eventually removed to avoid further controversy, even though it never contained anything harmful or inappropriate. It was simply a victim of timing. The fantasy boom was exciting for kids, but unsettling for adults who didn't fully understand it. Yet here is the twist. Dungeons and Dragons built a massive fan base anyway. Viewers admired its courage and its willingness to treat fantasy as real storytelling instead of light entertainment. Today, it's remembered not for the episodes that vanished, but for the imagination it sparked and the generation it inspired. Number 2. Transformers, 1984. It is hard to imagine a world where Transformers faced backlash, but during its original run from 1984 to 1987, certain episodes struck a nerve with broadcasters. The show was bold, cinematic, and filled with dramatic arcs that pushed far beyond the standard cartoon formula. Characters faced intense danger, choices carried weight, and the storytelling aimed higher than most networks expected from a toy-based series. The turning point arrived after a major character's departure shocked young audiences. Kids were emotionally invested, and parents weren't ready for a cartoon to be that serious. Complaints flooded stations. Some considered the stakes too intense. As a result, a handful of episodes from the following season were pulled in several regions. Others were edited to soften the emotional tone or reduce scenes that felt too heavy for children. But here's what makes this case unique. The controversy didn't damage the show's reputation. It elevated it. For the first time, animation fans realized a cartoon could carry real dramatic weight. The characters had depth, the world building was rich, and the storytelling leaned toward epic instead of simple. The episodes that were removed eventually resurfaced years later, often unedited, proving that the show wasn't inappropriate. It was simply ahead of its time. Transformers turned a generation of casual viewers into lifelong fans by daring to be bigger, braver, and bolder than television expected. Number 1. Thundar the Barbarian, 1980. If there was ever a cartoon that felt like it blasted straight out of a comic book and onto the screen, it was Thundar the Barbarian. Premiering in 1980, it brought viewers into a post-apocalyptic world filled with lightning storms, ruined cities, and ancient magic. The opening alone set a tone no other Saturday show dared to touch. It was bold, eerie, and thrilling from the very first frame. The show's setting featured crumbling landmarks, strange creatures, and an atmosphere that felt more dramatic than the usual weekend lineup. Parents were surprised by how dark the world looked compared to brighter, lighter cartoons airing beside it. Complaints soon followed. Some felt the show's creatures looked too intense. Others worried the ruined Earth backdrop was too heavy for young viewers. Even though Thundar himself stood for courage and hope, the overall setting made networks nervous. As a result, several stations removed it from their lineup, while others shifted it to less popular time slots. But fans saw something different. They loved the show's creativity, its daring visuals, and the feeling that they were stepping into a real living world instead of a simple cartoon landscape. It mixed fantasy, science fiction, and action with a confidence most shows didn't dare attempt. Thundar the Barbarian wasn't pulled because it failed. It was pulled because it went further than anyone expected. And that boldness is exactly why it still stands tall in animation history. And there you have it, 10 cartoons that pushed so far beyond the limits of their time that television had no idea how to handle them. Some vanished fast, others returned years later, but every one of them changed animation in its own bold way. If you enjoyed this dive into forgotten history, like, share, comment, and tell me which one surprised you most.